Smyth. Today I'm here with my mid-month wrap-up. Already December has been looking like a much better reading month than November. I don't know, I think that it's been like happening slowly. I don't know if that makes sense, but like November just like passed by in like a second, and like December has been taking its sweet time, which I appreciate because I'm not ready for it to be 2022 yet. But yeah, we're halfway through the month. I have read 6 books because I also read an ebook. So let's discuss them. I'm proud of myself for reading this many physical books, by the way. Just an FYI. But the first book I read this month was the ebook, and it's Fools in Love, which is an anthology edited by Rebecca Podos and Ashley Herman Blake, which gave 4 to 5 stars to Graduate from Nagali. This basically is an anthology in which a bunch of YA authors like do reimaginings of very popular romance tropes. So you have like fake dating, Butter's best friend, forced proximity, one bad trope, like a bunch of tropes like that. And yeah, I ended up really liking this anthology. There were some stories in here that I didn't really like as much. Like, I think my average rating was a 3.3, but I rounded that up to a 4-star because I just had a great time reading this anthology. I thought it was a lot of fun. There were just a bunch of cute stories about like people falling in love, and there's a lot of queer stories in this as well, which I really appreciated. I feel like often when it comes to like these romance tropes, it is very like cis straight heavy, and this book mainly had queer stories. There were some cis straight stories in here as well, but not all of them were. There was also a trans character in one of the stories, so there was a lot of representation in here, which I appreciated. There's also a lot of authors and characters of color as well, so I just liked that diversity in this anthology as well. I don't really have that much to say about it. I thought the way people like interpreted this trope was really fun, and even though there were stories I liked a little bit less, most of them I did have a very fun time with. And yeah, if you go to my Goodreads or my book blog, what will have reviews that have a full breakdown of each story, so maybe that will help you. That was a terrible review. I apologize. Let's move on to the like full-length book that I read. That's Legion by Julia Quinn, which I gave 2 to 5 stars. This is the 4th book in the Talent series, which I have been reading throughout the past couple of months. And in the first book we follow Amber, who is a dragon, and very exceptional is that she has a twin brother who's also a dragon. Like, usually among dragons, like twins aren't very common, so like that's special. And they're sent to go undercover in like this human town to kind of like learn human behaviors so that it's easier for them to survive in the future. This is like part of their like dragon education. In this town we have 2 other presences. We have Garrett, who is a dragon hunter sent to this town to discover the dragons that are undercover and like kill them because he's a dragon hunter. And we also follow Wiley, who is someone who escaped from the like dragon organization and is a rebel and is trying to get more young dragons out of this organization because it isn't a great place to be. And yeah, also a very important thing that I should mention that I forgot is that Garrett and Amber don't know about each other's identities, and they end up befriending each other and eventually also falling for each other, which causes for an interesting dynamic. That's the plot of this series. I've given it a lot of times on this channel. I apologize, but I need to make my way through the series. And at this point, I'm kind of over the series. The only reason I'm continuing is because there's 1 book left, and I'm not gonna DNF a 5-book series at book 4, you know? That just feels like I wasted my time. I'm not really having a great time with this. I think it was especially prominent in this book because the love triangle finally got like resolved, so that wasn't that big of a deal in this one anymore. So now that the plot comes to the forefront instead of the love triangle, I just realized how not great the plot is. There's a lot of interesting twists and turns in this book, but the author doesn't do anything with them and like abandons very interesting story ideas that are introduced to do like very lame boring stuff. And I'm not having a great time with the series. I don't really like any of the characters except Dante, which has been the discovery we've made last book. Dante is like barely in this series, which again is a crime because such an interesting perspective, but not included. And I feel like if Dante was used more, I might also dislike him, just because that's what happened to other characters in it as well. Let's move on to another book I didn't like. That's the Falling in Love Montage by Ciara Smyth, which I gave 2 to 5 stars. This, I've heard so many great things about, so I was very disappointed by it. But it follows a girl who, like, has stopped believing in love after, like, a terrible breakup. Like, she was best friends with this other girl for, like, ages, and then they started dating, and she thought they were going to spend their lives together. But they broke up, and around the same time her parents also got divorced, so she's like giving up on love. Then she meets this other girl at this party, and this girl is in town because she's like staying with her cousin while her parents are out of the country, and she is like a hopeless romantic, and they decide to have like this relationship where they kind of reenact like bunch of different rom-com tropes and have like this fun summer without heartbreak, because both of them know that it will be done at the end of summer, which doesn't sound like a great plan. Like, no heartbreak because we know already beforehand when it's gonna end. That doesn't sound foolproof, but here we are. I read this for a romance reading vlog, which I'll leave in like I don't know what site that's on, so you can go watch my thoughts on this as I was reading this. But I hated the main character with a fiery passion, and apparently I'm the only one, because most reviews that I've read on Goodreads and seen on TikTok, which is why I picked up this book in the first place, like, love the main character and think she's like so quirky and cool. I despised her so much. Like, she was so infuriating, so selfish, so hypocritical, so self-centered, and I feel like she constantly thought that everyone was against her, while in reality no one was against her, and life just is shitty sometimes, you know? No one is like out to get you, you know? That's not the case. And I hated her so much. And on top of that, I wasn't really that convinced of the romance. I feel like we barely knew anything about her love interest. I didn't have a great sense of who she was as a person, and there just like was no chemistry between the two characters, which I especially hated, because I know this author can write a good chemistry, because the main character has great chemistry with the love interest cousin, like platonic chemistry. I have to emphasize that. It's fully platonic chemistry, but it's so well done. And they spent less time together as the main character and the love interest, and yet I still have a better sense of who the cousin is. And then there was also like this big family element to this that I eventually don't like the way it was resolved, because it really shows off how selfish and hypocritical the main character is, and that she hadn't grown at all throughout the entire book. So yeah, 2 stars. There were some elements to it that I liked. I liked the writing. I thought there were some fun moments. Like I said, I really liked the friendship with the love interest cousin, and even like that family dynamic within the love interest situation I also quite liked. So I am intrigued to read more by this author, but like, this one wasn't it. Next, for the romance reading vlog, I read From Blood and Ash by Jennifer Armentrout, which I gave 4 to 5 stars. This is a bit hard to explain, but basically we follow Poppy, who is a maiden, and in this world that basically means she's like someone special, chosen to like save humanity, I guess. It's how it's explained is not like it's confusing, but because of that, she has like very strict rules on her. I just have to say the Dutch translation makes this a much easier point. Instead of the maiden, like if you translate it, it would be like the virgin, which I feel like makes like immediately explains all the rules that are put on her, you know? But even besides that, there are rules where she like rarely can talk to anyone, she can make friends. She also has like a magical ability that she has to keep hidden at all times. This is a terrible explanation, but basically Poppy hates these rules. So one night, like she escapes from her room very often and like goes into town and does stuff, but this book starts off where she does that, comes across Hawk, who is new to, it's not really a palace, but like the place, and he's like a guard that came from like another place, and it's like very high in ranks even though he's young and new. So like everyone has been intrigued by him, and they end up meeting, but like Hawk doesn't know who she is, and like they have a moment that very much goes against the rules, and then stuff happen. She like kidnapping attempts happened on her, which killed her guard, which means that now Hawk is put in his position. And yeah, it's a fantasy romance, and I explained it terribly. I just have a hard time explaining this book without going into spoiler territory, because this book doesn't explain itself until like the last chunk, which is why I liked it. I see a lot of people saying at the beginning of this book was very info dumpy, and I didn't really get that, because for most of this book I was very confused about like the lore of this fantasy world. But that's because it's very complex, and our main character herself like doesn't know a lot of things. So a lot of things like keep getting mentioned as like this big important thing, and we never really get explained what that is until like the very end. And I really quite liked how that was done, but I was also a bit confused at the point. But I like the way it was like all was revealed and everything felt natural. I like that. But I like a book, especially a high fantasy one. There's a high fantasy romance, so you know it's still high fantasy. I like when those books like take the time to like get into story, like they don't start full action, like have a slow start and like really like pull you into this world and have you completely like that atmosphere of it and like attached to the characters, and then it's like, okay, let the plot go bananas. And this one did that, and I like that. I know a lot of people don't, so that's just a quick warning. If you don't like a slow start, you might also not like this book. If you don't like other Jennifer Armentrout books, like especially because of her characters, you might also not like this. You have to say, even though Hawk and Poppy are like typical JLA main characters, I was less annoyed with them than other JLA main characters that I've had, just because of like personal preference, I guess. It's written a little bit differently. I feel like Poppy's like stubbornness and rebellious side makes more sense because of like all the rules that she's been put on and how strictly she's confined. So that makes more sense to me than other characters who can just do whatever the hell they want and just have like no sense of self-preservation. I feel like Poppy didn't really have that, so I like that. Also liked the cast of side characters. I liked the romance as well. I thought that was really well done. Again, it's like more of like a slower burn, because even though like they're instantly attracted to each other, like Poppy is in this position where she like can't do anything, so they are more like careful. And even without Poppy's like maiden status, for a guard to like fall for someone he's guarding is also like a little bit taboo. So I like that that was done a little bit more slower, and like with just them having interactions and conversations and having fun. I like before like fully going into like the romance. I love the twists at the end. Like I saw them coming, but like I don't give a shit if I see twists coming, if they're just like fun and well done. I don't give a shit. And these were fun and well done. I really like them. And as I talked about with Legion earlier, that didn't take risks, this definitely did. And I really liked it. I'm very excited to see where the series is going in the future. I like fell like a week ago, and like my arm has been hurting because of it, and I haven't felt the pain of it for a couple of days until now. But all the book holding, my shoulder is sore. So yeah, let's move on. 2 more books to go. The first one being The Score by Elle Kennedy, which I gave 2 out of 5 stars. This is the 3rd book, I believe, in the off-campus series. I'm not reading them in order. I apologize. This one follows Allie, who just broke up with her longtime boyfriend, and it's kind of a way to forget about her boyfriend. She ends up having a one-night stand with Dean, who is like the school's player, and like has had sex with like almost every girl. And he can't stop thinking about her, and it's not a thing that's ever happened, but like she doesn't want things to happen again, yet it's their romance, so you know how it's gonna go. Again, terrible explanation. I feel like I'm having a troubled relationship with the series, even though I've only read 2 books, and that's the first one and then this one, because I like a lot of things in this book. Like I like Dean, I like Allie, I like their romance. I think that's very well done. I've read a couple of romances recently where authors seem to think that sexual attraction and romantic feelings are the same thing. They're not. So I really appreciated that this book, which is more like a friends with benefit situation, like really took the time to like also develop romantic feelings besides just that sexual attraction. There was a lot of moments where Dean and Ellie are like just hanging out and having fun, and I liked how that was done. So no complaints for me there. I also just, a thing I have been liking in this book is that there are ice hockey romances, so all the guys are into ice hockey, but like the women so far, like in the deal and in this one, have also been into things. Like in the deal, Hannah was very much into like singing, and this one we see her up here, she's more like into composing rather than singing, but like music. And then Ellie is very much into acting, and she wants to pursue a career in acting. I really like how those are also like big elements to the stories besides just the ice hockey. I appreciate that. And yeah, those are all the things I like. Also really love the side characters in this one. The problem I had with the deal is that I felt like the side characters weren't really well done, especially because they're supposed to be like the love interest for every continuing book. But I thought the side characters in this one were really well done. But the third act conflict is just absolute shite. Like, so bad. Because I feel like, one, it didn't make sense. Two, both of the characters acted out of character for this to like work. Which I feel like if you have a conflict and it only works when your characters are acting out of character, scrap the conflict. That's not a good idea. Yeah, this is the second book in the series that I've read, and also the second book in the series that does that, where just they act out of character for the third act conflict. So yeah. Last book for today is On the Way to the Wedding by Julia Quinn, which I give 5 stars. I love it so much. It is the 8th and final Bridgerton book. In this one we follow Gregory Bridgerton, who is the second youngest. Takes place 4 years after the last book. And Gregory has seen all his siblings fall in love, marry for love. So, of course, he truly believes in love and only wants to marry for love. And then he, at a party, meets Hermione Watson, and he just sees her across the room and is like, yep, that's the woman I'm in love with. I'm gonna marry her. And turns out, basically every man has ever thought that about Hermione. So it's not an easy feat, especially because Hermione is already in love with her father's secretary, which is, you know, a bit of a scandalous match. And then our protagonist is Lucy, who is best friends with Hermione and also just wants to look out for Hermione's future, and it's like, yeah, it's great you're in love with this guy, but like your future is gonna be like very different than how you imagine it because of like the social difference and how much of a scandal it will be. So as a way to kind of protect her best friend, she like very much sees that Gregory is intrigued by, like, is genuinely has feelings for her and like is a great match for her. So she tries to like get Hermione and Gregory together. But of course, Lucy and Gregory end up falling for each other, and it's so good. Okay, so for this book, the first half like is focused mainly on Lucy trying to get Hermione and Gregory together, and I feel like even though there were moments where both Lucy and Gregory like experienced attraction to each other, and I liked those moments, I didn't really feel the like sparks that I typically feel with these books. So I was a bit like scared of how it was gonna go. I was still enjoying my time. I think Lucy and Gregory were amazing characters. I liked the dynamics as friends even. I really liked Hermione as well. But I was scared because I didn't have that sparks. And typically I have them pretty early in these books that I feel like the sparks between the two characters. But then the second half happens and we're truly in like that point where they're falling for each other. And the sparks were there, but you need that first half without it to like for it to truly make sense and for everything to feel as happy and satisfying and heartbreaking, because there's a lot of angst in this one as well as it is. So yeah, I really ended up loving this. There's a lot of angst in the second half because there are some difficulties with them getting together, because Lucy has been like engaged to this man like her entire life. Like her uncle arranged that marriage, like this isn't a love match or anything. So there was some angst around that situation, but I feel like how that was done, like keeping them apart, was done really well, and I really understood their motivations and like the explanation behind what was keeping them apart. Sometimes I have difficulties with like two people are obviously in love that just like don't get together. I'm just like, why? Like, why are you not together right now? This one I understood it, which I appreciate. And yeah, like I said, a lot of angst, really well done. My heart broke in like tiny pieces at certain scenes, which I'm not gonna delve into properly because spoilers. And at the very end, there's like action packed, but like in a good way. It's like, ooh, what's happening? It's like intrigue. It's fun. And yeah, I had a blast reading this book. I thought this was also a great conclusion to the series. A lot of the Bridgerton siblings pop up in this one, but it all feels very natural and just like, yeah, we're helping out a little brother, or like, I don't know, it just feels natural. It doesn't feel like, hey, you remember these characters? Here they are. That's all I have for you today. thank God, because my mom is in pain. Let me know in the comments down below what you thought of these books, if you read them as well, some of the books you've read so far this month, and I guess I'll see you guys next time. Good.
Here I am again, the same old situation. Why does the God thing have to be so complicated? Should've played it cool instead of